You ever watch a team lose and feel a single sentence from one player suddenly explains half the problem? That's where we are with the Steelers right now. Aaron Rodgers, a guy who usually measures his words like a surgeon, walked up to the mic after a 26-7 beatdown at the hands of the Bills and didn't do the usual ritual of platitudes. Instead, he said this: "When there's film sessions, everyone shows up. When I check to a route, run the right route." Translation: players aren't doing the work, and when the plays change, some of them aren't following through. That line lands heavy for three reasons. One, it's Aaron Rodgers, the cerebral veteran who built a career on preparation and precision. Two, it echoes a growing trend in the league where quarterbacks are calling out the locker room. Remember Tua? And third, it's the kind of public critique that does not sit quietly in today's social media echo chamber. It's loud. It's specific enough to sting, but vague enough to create rumor stews for days. And in a season where the Steelers are circling the edges of the playoff picture, those rumor-mongering nights can become season-defining days. Let's be clear about what Rodgers didn't say. He didn't name names. He didn't point a camera at a single receiver's locker. But he didn't have to. The message was surgical. If you skip the tape, you're stealing minutes from the guys who care. If you run the wrong route, you don't just cost yourself, you cost the whole offense a chance. That's the part that's getting under the skin of the organization and the fan base. This isn't petty. This is functional. Routes are the grammar of football. When punctuation disappears, sentences collapse. Why does film matter so much? Because football is less about flash and more about nuance. The route tree, the coverage calls, the check at the line, all of those are dependent on everybody knowing the plan. One missed detail can turn a 12-yard gain into a turnover. Rodgers knows that better than most. He built his reputation on the little things: pre-snap adjustments, seeing coverages, anticipatory timing. That's why his frustration stings. He didn't come to Pittsburgh to babysit. He came to fix a hummingbird of an offense and turn it into a machine. There's another layer here that's easy to miss if you only watch highlight reels. Veterans feel responsible for culture. Rodgers is in his 40s. He's been a locker room general for 2 decades. When a team shows up inconsistent, the veteran leaders, especially quarterbacks, feel it as a personal failure. That's why his phrasing was simple and direct. He didn't wave the flag at coaching issues or play calling or injuries. He pointed to habits. Habits are fixable. Habits are also the most stubborn thing in sports. A locker room that treats preparation seriously can climb a mountain quickly. One that doesn't will trip on its own shoelaces. Now let's talk about the consequences. The Steelers are around 500, and every week feels like a playoff fork in the road. In a league where wildcard margins are decided by a single bounce or a single blown coverage, lackadaisical film habits aren't a personality flaw. They're a competitive death sentence. Rodgers calling out teammates publicly does 2 things. It signals urgency and it raises pressure. Some players respond to that pressure by tightening up, improving focus, and showing up to the next meeting with a chip on their shoulder. Others retreat, resentful about being shamed in public. So his words are a gamble. They might ignite a small renaissance, or they might widen a locker room rift. There's also history here. Rodgers isn't new to calling out teammates for detail mistreatment. He's had pointed conversations in the past with teammates who weren't on the red line of plays, who weren't where the offense needed them to be. The difference now is context. This Steelers roster doesn't have time for slow-turning corrections. They've invested in star talent, made big offseason bets, and yet the offense sputters. When reality doesn't match the roster card on paper, fans and front offices get impatient. Rodgers' frankness might be the signal that the team's margin for patience has run out. But let's be fair, the problem isn't just individual inconsistency, it's structural. The offense has been through schematic changes, injuries, and a quarterback swap that asks young receivers to learn on the fly. The offensive line has had its issues. Timing between quarterback and receiver depends on reps in practice and real game chemistry, both of which can be interrupted by personnel changes. Rodgers calling out film room attendance is valid, but it's only one place of many where the chain can snap. Film is the glue. But if your glue bucket is empty because other things are wrong, you can't just yell at players to stick harder. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Public callouts, when repeated, become a messy storyline the media will feast on. We've seen it before. Quarterbacks publicly shade teammates respond with defensiveness, coaches try to mediate, and the cycle repeats until it either explodes or morphs into motivation. The smart path is to make the public comment a catalyst for private action. Use the statement to reset standards, then lock the doors on corrective processes. If Rodgers wants respect, he has to back up the mic with accountability. Extra walkthroughs, coached route watches, film room penalties, or incentive structures. The organization has to show that film matters by making attendance and attention tangible. There's a coaching dimension too. If players are skipping film because they feel overworked or because sessions are unfocused, it's a sign to the staff to audit their methods. Film meetings that are lecture-heavy, redundant, or poorly organized will lose buy-in. The fix might be as simple as restructuring film into shorter, more targeted sessions with clear takeaways and holding players to standards where skipping meaningful work has a real consequence. The best teams make the boring work interesting and accountable. The Steelers need to do that fast. What about Rodgers' leadership style? It's blunt. Some players will appreciate that bluntness, many will. Younger players often need direct feedback, and a veteran like Rodgers doesn't have the time for niceties. But leadership is also relational. You can be demanding and generous at the same time. The greatest leaders make their standards clear while also coaching players up. If Rodgers wants to get his point across without fracturing the room, the next step has to be action, specifics, corrections, and visible change. Otherwise, the words echo like an empty whistle. So what's the takeaway? First, Rodgers' comments are a mirror. They reflect an offense that's not performing the small things that win games. Second, they're a challenge. The room can respond by tightening focus or by letting the critique fester. And third, time is not the Steelers' ally. You can say, we'll fix it, only for so long before the standings start doing the talking. If you're a Steelers fan, this season has turned into a series of micro decisions that add up to a macro outcome. Rodgers calling out film room slippage isn't the problem, it's the symptom. The real test will be whether the team treats that sentence like a wake-up call or a punchline. Because in the NFL, habits beat talent when the playoffs begin. And right now, Rodgers is trying to make sure his teammates know that getting the small things right is not optional. It's the only path to staying alive. Aaron Rodgers calls out unnamed receivers for skipping film sessions, running wrong routes, or double fries. The Steelers are slumping, and quarterback Aaron Rodgers isn't holding anything back. In comments that sounded a whole lot like what Dolphins quarterback Tua Tagovailoa said earlier this year, Rodgers publicly called out some unnamed teammates after Sunday's flat 26-7 loss to the